The alarm tears through the silence like a blade, shrill and merciless, and in that moment, every muscle in my body knows exactly what to do. I don't have time to think. I sprint across the hardened shelter, boots pounding against the concrete, the echo mixing with the rising roar of ground crews already scrambling. The fulcrum waits for me, a dark shape crouched under floodlights, its twin vertical fins towering over the scene like warning flags. My hand grips the cold metal of the ladder and I haul myself up, heart hammering as the smell of kerosene hits me, raw, sharp, the unmistakable perfume of flight. Sliding into the cockpit feels like being swallowed whole by the machine. The seat locks me in, straps snap across my chest, and for a second, I can hear only my own breathing inside the helmet. Power on. Switches flip under my fingers in a rhythm drilled into muscle memory. The cockpit is a forest of dials, amber bulbs, and green digits, each one blinking into life. The SPO-15 radar warning receiver flashes as it runs its self-test, promising that in just a few minutes it might scream a warning that means survival. The hoodie warms up and throws a faint green glow across the glass, ready to overlay symbols that could spell life or death. The Rubin radar stays dark, waiting for me to wake it when the sky turns hostile. The ground crew tugs the wheel chocks free. There's no turning back now. If you felt the rush of the engines, the weight of the G-forces, and the tension inside the cockpit, imagine what awaits in the next story. There are countless machines, missions, and hidden details still to uncover, and every one of them brings you closer to the heart of aviation history. Subscribe now and stay with me in the seat, because the next flight might just change the way you see the skies forever. Engines. I wrap my fingers around the throttle, push the starter sequence, and the left RD-33 coughs before roaring awake. Heat distortion shimmers outside the canopy, turbines whining higher and higher until the whole jet hums like a living creature. The right engine follows seconds later, twin thunder now vibrating through the frame and into my chest. These aren't just power plants. They are compact turbofans capable of surging me past Mach 2 if I dare push them hard enough, and yet delicate enough that a single mistake in handling could flame them out. It's a paradox every MiG-29 pilot knows. Fragile when mistreated, ferocious when commanded. I check hydraulics, oxygen, fuel pressure. The artificial horizon steadies. In front of me, the runway lights gleam like a sword cutting into the night. My radio crackles. Clearance to taxi. I ease the throttle forward and the aircraft lurches into motion, nose wheels squealing faintly as I swing toward the runway. From the side windows, I catch glimpses of ground crew saluting, their figures silhouetted against the exhaust glow. They vanish behind me. Now it's just me, the jet, and the black void ahead. As I line up on the runway centerline, a strange calm replaces the adrenaline. Both engines spool up, the needles climb, gauges steady. I hold the brakes, and the MiG trembles, straining like a predator at the leash. My thumb flips the detent, and I slam the throttles past the gate into afterburner. Instantly, a twin blast of fire erupts behind me, and the cockpit shudders with unleashed fury. The acceleration is violent, pinning me into the seat, pushing blood into my chest. The runway blurs. Lights streak past. Numbers climb on the airspeed indicator faster than thought itself. At rotation speed, I pull gently on the stick, and the fulcrum obeys with the elegance of a blade drawn from its sheath. Wheels leave the ground, vibrations smooth into the velvet rush of flight, and the earth begins to fall away. Gear up, flaps up. The climb rate surges past 200 meters per second, like an elevator to the stratosphere. I can feel the wing extensions, the LERX, grabbing air, generating invisible vortices that promise maneuverability far beyond what most Western pilots could imagine in this era. Even now, in climb, they whisper that this jet was designed to outturn anything in its class. The controller's voice cuts through the radio, calm but urgent, already feeding me bearing and altitude. 90 kilometers out. High target. Vectoring me into the unknown. My hand hovers over the radar switch, ready to bring Rubin to life, but for now I let the fulcrum stretch its legs, climbing clean and fast, listening to the song of the engines. The cabin trembles slightly as we slice through layers of atmosphere. Clouds streak past the canopy like smears of white paint on black glass. Every second brings me closer to the intercept point, closer to the reason this machine exists. And as I settle into the climb, something shifts. The cockpit ceases to feel like a machine and becomes an extension of my own body. Each gauge is a heartbeat, each vibration a breath, each flicker of light a nerve impulse. The jet is no longer waiting for my command. It is anticipating it. There is a moment, just before I switch on the radar and enter the hunt, when the world narrows to a single truth. The MiG-29 and I are no longer separate. The alarm that began this mission hasn't faded. It still echoes inside my chest. But now it feels less like panic and more like destiny. What lies ahead is unknown, but the fulcrum is alive under me, straining to meet it. And the next seconds will decide whether this night is routine or remembered forever. The climb feels endless, yet the MiG seems impatient, eager to break away from the Earth and meet whatever challenge awaits. The altimeter unwinds rapidly, each 1,000 meters disappearing faster than my eyes can process. The cockpit hums with restrained energy. Every vibration and whisper of airflow a reminder that the fulcrum was never designed to be gentle. It was created with a single purpose: to close the distance with an enemy, to strike fast, and to dominate the turning fight. Even now, accelerating through the thin night air, I can feel that DNA pressing against me, demanding that I push harder, climb faster, react quicker. The large leading-edge root extensions curve out from the fuselage, invisible from this angle, but always at work. At high angles of attack, they spin vortices of air that cling to the wings, delaying stall, keeping the jet agile where others would tumble. This design is why Western pilots learned to respect the fulcrum. They knew that if a dogfight descended into close quarters, the MiG would dance in places their jets could not follow. Stories circulate in briefing rooms and simulator pods of NATO pilots who underestimated the Soviet machine during exercises and found themselves staring at a green helmet shimmering in their canopy before they could react. That reputation isn't myth. It is physics, sculpted into the airframe I'm now riding toward the stars. The controller's voice fills my headset, calm but sharp, painting a picture of the invisible. 90 kilometers ahead, high altitude, a track closing fast. He does not tell me what the contact is. He does not need to. It could be a bomber, it could be a reconnaissance plane, it could be a fighter already hunting me in return. My left hand brushes the switch that could wake the Rubin radar, but I hesitate. Once I light it, I become visible too, and the cat and mouse begins. For now, I let the engines drag me higher, the nose slicing through the dark as if the jet senses the prey before I do. The Rubin N019 sits quiet in the nose, an unblinking eye capable of peering into the distance with pulse Doppler precision. When I choose, it will sweep a 60-degree cone, searching for echoes hidden against the sky. It is not a perfect machine. Western radars of the era often held an advantage in processing power, but it was crafted for a specific doctrine: ground-controlled intercepts guiding the fighter into position before the pilot unleashed radar and weapons. Even now, the echoes of that doctrine are alive in my headset, the ground controller feeding me headings and altitudes like invisible rails, leading to a confrontation I cannot yet see. Fuel gauges tick downward, reminding me that every second an afterburner drains the reserves. The MiG-29 was never meant for long patrols. Its heart beats hot and fast, designed for short sprints and brutal exchanges, not endless loitering. That is why tankers and forward bases are vital, why Soviet doctrine always positioned fulcrums close to the front. The aircraft is a sprinter, not a marathon runner, and every drop of fuel burned now must be justified when the fight begins. I adjust the throttle, easing out a full afterburner into military power, trading raw climb for speed and efficiency. The cockpit quiets slightly, though the roar never truly fades. I glance at the heads-up display, the horizon line glowing faint against the night, altitude and speed scrolling steadily. The systems are awake, waiting. Armament panels glow with readiness. 2 R-27s slung beneath the wings, sleek arrows meant to reach far, and a set of R-73s nestled like daggers at my sides, waiting for close combat. In the nose, 30 millimeters of cold steel sit in the GSH-31 cannon, 150 rounds, each one capable of tearing a hole in a fuselage the size of a small car. It is not volume of fire that matters. It is precision, and at these speeds, even a fraction of a second of impact can decide everything. The air thins, the stars sharpen, and the MiG feels alive, quivering with anticipation. I sense the control surfaces adjusting constantly, tiny deflections that keep the jet steady as we slice through layers of atmosphere. The limiters, invisible guardians coded into the system, whisper boundaries into my hands. Pull too hard, they intervene, preventing overstress. Push the angle of attack too steep, they step in to hold me just short of the stall. It is not a digital fly-by-wire brain, but a hybrid of hydraulics and mechanical logic that keeps man and machine in harmony. It allows me to focus on the fight ahead rather than fear of the machine beneath me. I know what is coming. Soon, I will switch on the radar, and the Rubin will bathe the sky in pulses of energy. If an adversary waits there, it will hear me, feel me, and respond. The silence of the climb will shatter into the dance of detection and counter-detection. Each second a gamble between revealing myself and gaining the first lock. The controller's vector sharpens, guiding me to a point in space where the unseen will become visible. My hand tightens on the stick, and just as I prepare to press the switch, I realize that this is the razor's edge of modern combat. One click, and I announce my presence to friend and foe alike. One moment of delay, and I risk arriving blind into the jaws of another hunter. The MiG-29 surges beneath me, ready for either path. In seconds, the calm climb will end, and the true confrontation will begin. The sky ahead sharpens into a hunting ground, and silence no longer feels safe. With the deliberate flick of the switch, the Rubin radar wakes. The sweep begins, pulses of invisible energy carving through the darkness. Almost immediately, the echo appears. Solid, insistent, hovering at the edge of detection. A moving shape, altitude matching the vectors called by ground control. My HUD fills with symbols. Distance ticks downward. Closure rate climbing fast. In the space of a breath, the mission shifts from anticipation to confrontation. I push the throttles forward, feel the surge of thrust pressing me deeper into the seat. The fulcrum leaps ahead as if hungry for the fight. The distance collapses, 70 kilometers, 60, 50. I thumb the selector to arm the R-27R, the semi-active radar missile that depends on my illumination to track. Its long fuselage rests under my wing like a spear waiting to be thrown. I steady my breathing, because I know the moment I commit, the opponent's instruments will scream with warning. My advantage lies not in stealth, but in timing. The crosshairs tighten on the HUD, guiding me into the envelope where a launch would be deadly. Yet instinct whispers caution. At these ranges, in this machine, the fight rarely ends before you see the whites of the other pilot's eyes. The target swings wide, nose lifting slightly. The contact is aware, reacting. I sense the transition, the invisible line where long-range engagement fades and the brutal intimacy of close combat begins. I thumb the radar off, plunging the cockpit into silence again. From here, the fulcrum must rely on sight, on agility, on instincts honed through endless hours of training. I level my wings, searching, eyes darting across the canopy glass. A glint, a shadow. Then I see it, against the faint glow of the horizon. A dark silhouette cutting across the sky. The merge happens in seconds. Two jets scream past each other at closing speeds that leave no time for thought, only reaction. I roll inverted, pull hard. The G-forces crushing down, pressing me into the seat with 6 times my own weight. Blood fights to stay in my head. Vision tunnels at the edges. The MiG holds, wings biting the air. Vortices spiraling off the LERX to keep me steady in the climb and roll. The fulcrum loves this moment. At these speeds, at these angles, it was bred to outturn anything in the sky. My nose slices across the circle, trying to trap the opponent in the reticle. For a brief second, the target flashes across my HUD. Too far for the cannon, too close for the radar missile. This is where the short blades are drawn. I flick the selector to R-73, the missile that made Western pilots nervous. Compact, agile, designed for high off-bore sight shots. The system in my helmet comes alive. A small circle floats wherever I look, following my eyes, as if the jet has given me a second sight. I snap my gaze to the enemy's position, and the circle locks. My thumb hovers over the trigger, heartbeat syncing with the tone in my headset. I imagine for a moment what the missile would do. Rails spitting fire, seeker head swiveling, vectoring fins biting hard into the slipstream. In real combat, it would twist violently toward the heat of engines, capable of pulling maneuvers that no aircraft could evade. In training, the simulation system simply chirps the word that all pilots both dread and crave: kill. The sound echoes in my helmet, hollow yet final. I do not relax. In the arena of combat, nothing ends cleanly. The warning receiver explodes with noise, a sharp, urgent shriek. Someone else has locked me. The geometry has shifted, and now I am prey. Without hesitation, I slam the throttles into afterburner. Twin plumes ignite behind me, the fulcrum vaulting forward with raw violence. The G-meter climbs again as I pitch down, diving toward denser air to rebuild speed and energy. My fingers release a burst of countermeasures. Bright flares streak past the canopy, decoys for infrared seekers, chaff trailing like metallic snow to confuse radar-guided missiles. The cockpit rattles with turbulence, the structure groaning under the strain. Yet the MiG is alive, responsive, its control surfaces dancing with precision. I roll hard into a split S, flipping inverted before pulling through the bottom, trading altitude for speed. The limiters guard me from excess, holding me just short of the stall angle, allowing me to drag every ounce of performance from the airframe without crossing into disaster. The ground rushes up before leveling steadies my flight path. My lungs burn, my vision narrows, but the jet holds together. I risk a glance back. Nothing visible, but the receiver's tones fade. Whatever had me in its sights has broken lock, whether fooled by my decoys or distracted by the violence of my maneuver. The reprieve is temporary. In this game, seconds of silence can be more dangerous than alarms. They mean the hunter is repositioning. The radio crackles. 2 words from control: knock it off, training end. The words settle like an unexpected parachute, pulling me out of the intensity. My breathing slows, but my body still shakes with adrenaline. I ease the throttles, let the engines hum at a steady roar, and the fulcrum levels with quiet obedience. The simulated enemy fades into the night, a shadow already gone. Yet the echoes of the engagement remain in my muscles, in my bones, in the sharp metallic taste of effort that lingers at the back of my throat. What strikes me is how real it felt. Even in a controlled exercise, the boundary between simulation and survival blurs when you are strapped into a machine like this. The MiG does not differentiate. Its wings, its engines, its sensors, all are built for lethal purpose, and in those minutes, I was truly at war. The silence now is almost unsettling, as if the storm has passed but left the air charged with electricity. The gauges steady, the night stretches endless ahead of me, and I know this is only a pause. The next engagement will come, and when it does, it may not end with a simulated tone, but with fire and fragments tearing through the sky. The fulcrum has shown me its teeth, and it waits to bare them again. The silence after the call to end the exercise feels almost unnatural. My ears still ring with the shriek of the warning receiver, and my muscles are heavy from the weight of the maneuvers, but now the fulcrum glides through the night with deceptive calm. I ease the throttles back to a steady cruise, watching the fuel indicators tick downward. They are a constant reminder that this fighter was never meant for long-distance patrols. It is a sprinter, not a marathon runner, designed to fight close to home, to launch, engage, and return before its tanks run dry. That philosophy is written in every line of its design, from the compact fuselage to the limited internal fuel volume. Pilots who learned the jet in its early years often joked, half seriously, that the R in MiG-29's NATO codenames Fulcrum might as well have stood for refuel. I glance at the panel as the automatic transfer system shifts the balance of fuel from the wing tanks to the fuselage reserves. It's seamless, almost invisible, but essential. A Fulcrum pilot cannot afford to be distracted during combat by managing pumps and valves, so the engineers built the system to do the work quietly in the background. Yet the consequence is stark. After a few minutes of afterburner, you're already looking at a return home. In real combat, every decision must account for that clock ticking down. Push too far, chase too long, and you risk winning the fight only to lose the way back. It's a limitation that defined how the aircraft was deployed, close to the front lines, where it could leap into the fight and land again before thirst consumed it. As I bring the jet back toward base, the cockpit remains alive with subdued energy. The HUD has switched to navigation symbology, guiding me down the invisible corridors toward the runway. The Rubin radar rests silent again, its duty done for now, while the SPO-15 sits ready in case another surprise appears on the scope. I can almost hear the echoes of past pilots who flew the Fulcrum in real combat. Yugoslavia in the 90s, Eritrea and Ethiopia, Syria, each of them balancing the same fuel gauge against the same sky. Each of them discovering in the heat of battle how much the aircraft could give and how much it demanded in return. Descending through layers of atmosphere, the jet shivers slightly, the air thickening against the skin of the fuselage. I deploy flaps in stages, feel the drag increase, the nose tilting down obediently. Landing gear clunks into place, 3 green lights blooming on the panel. The hoodie transforms again, offering me a glide path. Airspeed cues, a floating ladder of symbols that I must chase down to the threshold. These small details remind me how the Fulcrum was designed not just for brute force, but for precision. The Soviet engineers knew that pilots often returned exhausted, sometimes injured, sometimes in the dead of night, and the avionics were built to shepherd them back onto the ground as safely as possible. The approach feels fast, but that is the Fulcrum's nature. At touchdown speeds, it still carries momentum that wants to leap back into the sky. I flare gently, the canopy offering clear visibility down to the runway. The wheels kiss the concrete with a muted thud, the airframe shuddering as it adjusts to earth again. Almost immediately, the dorsal air brake rises like a pedal opening, biting into the slipstream. I squeeze the toe brakes, the deceleration steady, controlled. There is no thrust reverser here. Every bit of stopping power must come from brakes and air resistance. For a moment I imagine what it would feel like on a war-torn strip, debris scattered across the surface, one engine perhaps damaged, tires biting against uneven ground. The Fulcrum was built to handle that too. Rugged landing gear, short field capability, survivability built into the bones of the design. Taxiing off the runway, the adrenaline finally begins to fade. I bring the throttles back to idle, engines humming instead of roaring, and the jet rolls obediently toward its shelter. The canopy glass is streaked with condensation from my breath, and outside the ground, crew is already moving, waving, guiding me in. I shut down the right engine first, then the left, each turbine winding down with a fading howl that leaves the world suddenly quiet. The silence is heavy, but not empty. It carries the weight of what just happened, and what could have been if this had not been a drill. Sitting in the cockpit with the systems powering down, I can't help but reflect on what the Fulcrum has shown me. Its strengths are undeniable. The agility at medium speeds, the way the LERX keeps the wings alive in brutal turns, the freedom of the helmet-mounted sight guiding the R-73. All of it gives a pilot a weapon that feels almost alive. Yet its weaknesses are just as real. Limited range, avionics that demand constant attention, engines that can smoke visibly at certain throttle settings, betraying position to a sharp-eyed enemy. It is a machine of compromises, built at a time when raw maneuverability was considered the ultimate trump card. The history of this jet is filled with moments that reveal both sides of its nature. In early NATO exercises, Western pilots who underestimated it in close combat found themselves quickly outmaneuvered, surprised by the missile cued simply by a glance of the eye. In real conflicts, though, Fulcrum sometimes fell victim to opponents that engaged them at beyond visual range, where the advantages of agility could not be brought to bear before fuel ran out or missiles found their mark. It is a reminder that no aircraft, no matter how well designed, exists outside the realities of doctrine, training, and circumstance. And yet, for the pilot strapped into its seat, none of that matters in the moment. In combat, the fulcrum feels like a living extension of your will, a machine that rewards aggression and punishes hesitation. It whispers to you to trust the wings, to push the nose harder, to use your eyes and instincts rather than hiding behind electronics. That bond is intoxicating, dangerous, and unforgettable. I release the straps, lift the helmet from my head, and run a hand along the canopy rail. The air is cool now, the night quiet except for distant voices of the crew. The exercise is over, but the lessons remain sharp. The MiG-29 has reminded me of its essence. A fighter that can turn the tide in the tightest of battles but demands respect for its limits. It is not myth. It is not invincible. It is a collection of bold engineering choices made tangible in steel, composites, and fire. And as I climb down the ladder, boots touching the ground again, I know the next time the alarm sounds, the fulcrum will be waiting, ready to merge once more with the sky and to test me all over again.